Ladies and gentlemen, Madridistas, what is going on, fellas? A late winner. Um, let me just say that I was one goal short of my prediction. My prediction was 4-2 before the game. You know what? Just for that, hold on. Where's the? Stay humble, huh? All I have to say is, um, today there was a lot of adjustments in this game that Carlo Ancelotti made that I want to talk about. We have to give him his credit because he did make a lot of adjustments throughout the game, but a lot of these things they get overlooked. Um, so let's first of all start with the Dani Ceballos error. Overall, pretty good game by Dani Ceballos. I don't know if you guys agree. Let me know in the chat if you guys agree with my takes. But Dani Ceballos overall had a good game. But the only thing with Ceballos, and I spoke about this before the game, is sometimes his pass selection. He had one or two passes. I remember one in the 57th minute, if I remember, 57th minute, where it was a dangerous turnover. He tried to initiate a pass that was a little bit dangerous, and it could have led to another goal. So again, I like Dani Ceballos. He's really good. He works for a lot of games, but you cannot long term, especially once we start to get into the more elite sides in Europe, because let's face it, City's not where they used to be. Uh, Relying on Dani Ceballos for your ball progression does put you in a very difficult situation because he provides you with a lot of defensive intensity. He had a lot of really good defensive interventions today. So he deserves a lot of credit. But again, to me, when you're facing the truly elite sides who know what they're doing with a proper press with more structure, relying on Dani Ceballos could lead you to some possible issues. One of the things I noticed too was in the first half, we sat in a sort of mid to deep block with a 4-4-2 out of possession. Mbappe and Vinicius obviously at the top of that 4-4-2 as the two forwards. But if you notice in the second half, Carlo Ancelotti made that switch where he put Jude Bellingham and Mbappe up top, and he put Vinicius out wide out of possession. Out of possession, Jude Bellingham was the player who was occupying that sort of left midfielder role. And that little adjustment, it really worked tremendously because you saw not only the pressing from Jude Bellingham, but just his presence in the attacking third. It made such a big impact because what that did in the second half is allowed Vinicius to attack them down the wing, but it also gave Jude Bellingham the ability to also be a physical presence in the box, to pressure the ball, which obviously worked out and it was very effective. So those tweaks really worked well. You see Carlo Ancelotti make a lot of these tweaks throughout the game, and they get overlooked a lot of the times. Um, and he deserves a lot of credit for that adjustment because it did have an impact in the game. One of the things that I also noticed was their first goal comes from obviously from our right side, their left, and it was a lack of pressure on them putting the ball over the top to Guardiol, who Guardiol again he picks his moments to run into the box. In this game, there was nobody pressuring that ball over the top. And you saw the adjustment that Carlo made after that goal is he started to tell Fede and especially Ferland Mendy. If you guys notice, like Ferland Mendy, every single time Phil Foden would get the ball, Ferland Mendy would be on him. He would not let him turn. He would not give Phil Foden an opportunity because and the issue where we conceded that penalty, it happened because it was actually Ceballos who was trying to pressure and win that ball versus Ferland Mendy, who has more experience in those kinds of situations. But in terms of pressing, I'll just end up on that last point and just say that little tweak that Carlo Ancelotti made, it made such a big difference because every single time Manchester City did have the ball, they weren't able to just pick out whatever pass they wanted. Just pressuring the ball, making it more difficult for them to be able to pick Erling Haaland and pick some of the other players in behind our back line made such a big difference, and it protected Chouameni and it protected Asensio. Um, in terms of our actual pressing, our pressing is never. I don't know how you get this team to press. Do you have a lot of the players they need for an effective pressing pattern? You do, but the problem is that Kylian Mbappe, if if Real Madrid and Carlo Ancelotti cannot convince Kylian Mbappe to press, I don't know like who in this world can convince this guy to press a ball. Is Kylian Mbappe the best player when he steps on the pitch against any team? Yes. You know, Kylian Mbappe, he has a huge ego, but look at Vinicius. Even Cristiano Ronaldo used to press, but you cannot get this from Mbappe, and it does put the team in a very difficult position because you even noticed that Jude Bellingham during the game, he was pointing to Kylian Mbappe and saying like, "Hey, help me out, man. I'm trying to press here. Please cover, pressure their left back," because Jude Bellingham was initiating a lot of those pressing sequences, and he was looking at Mbappe, and Mbappe was just kind of jogging. So I can see how that's frustrating to his teammates because you have a guy like Mbappe in your team. You know he's a game changer. He's a guy that can win you the game, but at the same time, he cannot be bothered to press. And that issue makes it easier for the opposition to find passes behind our front line. And so far, we're okay. But against the elite sides, when you have one guy who will not press no matter what, it, I don't know. I don't know how you get Kylian Mbappe to start pressing. The other thing I'll say is in this game, we also saw that balance is important in football, of course, right? Because Dani Ceballos controlled the tempo for you. He initiated a lot of passes. I have to assume he had to have at least 60, 70 passes in this game. But to me, having Fede in that midfield would have made a big difference as well. He only had 2 shots. One of them he should have scored, if you guys remember that shot that fell to him. Also, by the way, Mbappe at the end of that first half should have scored. The fact that we're walking out of this game with a 3-2 win is honestly, it's very disappointing because we should have smashed them at least 5 goals. But in terms of like, if you're looking from the outside, looking at Real Madrid, they created chances. The overall process was pretty good. But if you had an elite defensive right back in that team and you can move Fede into the midfield, um, then you could have more control, more of a physical presence, especially because you saw a lot of the times, like for example, Erling Haaland was checking into the ball a lot. He was going pretty deep to try to pick up the ball, combine, and then be in behind. If you had a guy like Fede who can provide you more sort of a two-way presence, you could have more protection there because Kamavinga was doing a lot of pressing when we did not have the ball. Um, but I will say that overall, you have to be happy with this result because now going into the Bernabeu, obviously we have to like our chances. So I don't know if you guys agree with me, but today it just looked like one side was a free flowing side with better individuals, and the other side was a better coach team with not as good individual players. Um, Overall, if we played like this more often, we would not be in this situation. Sitting in a deeper block and trying to take advantage of our the pace of our players. Obviously, Barcelona tried to uh, copy the Barcelona game plan of trying to stop our counterattacks. They tried to play a high line, which is obviously a very dangerous thing um, because obviously the pace of these players is incredible. But we need to find solutions for that. When teams try to play a high line against us, we need to find solutions for that because obviously Barcelona will likely see them in the Copa del Rey, and then we'll likely see Barcelona at some point potentially in the Champions League. My thoughts on the Mbappe goal is, um, yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say about that goal. I mean, we'll take it. We'll take it. I thought Mbappe did a lot of things really well in this game. He looked sharp. He looked like a really elite player, but a lot of those final touches in front of goal, the chances he had, he did not convert them. But that's not saying that Kylian Mbappe is not one of the most elite forwards in Europe, if not the world, if not the best player in the world. But again, a lot of the times that Mbappe was getting the ball in this game, he was cutting in off the right-hand side. And you need a guy like Mbappe cutting off his left foot because that's where he's most comfortable. The last two games, this game and the game against Atletico Madrid, Kylian Mbappe is cutting off of the right-hand side, and you feel that he's a lot less comfortable. Uh, and then about the whole Vinny cry thing that we saw, that little tifo that they had before the game, in your faces. Manchester City fans are the most classless fans. They're amongst the most classless fans in Europe. These guys and Liverpool fans. And that's why I cannot wait until we face Liverpool. This team that played Manchester City today, this team is a much different side than the team that faced Liverpool. This side destroys Liverpool. I'm sorry. People can say whatever they want to say, but this was one of Manchester City's best performances of the season, and yet we still got a win away from home. Um, Jude Bellingham, let me just say that Judy, this guy, the way he attacks the space, the fact that Carlo Ancelotti made that adjustment, which I'm really glad he did, because that was a courageous adjustment that he made to play him higher up the pitch. It paid off. So again, that's why I feel like we can take a lot of we can criticize Carlo, and rightly so, but those little tweaks, they were very effective. And of course, Jude Bellingham is one of the most clutch, if not the Mr. Clutch guy in Europe. And to think that Pep Guardiola took this guy out to lunch for 3 hours to try and convince him to sign for Manchester City. So we should be very grateful that he chose to play for Real Madrid over more money at Manchester City. Because if we had to face Jude Bellingham, think about that. Like, I'm really glad that that's not the case. I have to say, though, like, Pep Guardiola did surprise me today, because Gundogan on the bench, Kovacic on the bench, bringing on bringing on Lewis in the second half. Lewis against Vinicius, clear mismatch. And had he done that earlier, they would have gotten destroyed, because you could see, if you're not putting a guy like Akanji against Vinicius, you're cooked. Akanji did relatively well in terms of like the 1v1 defending. It's only so much you can do against Vinicius. But just the fact that we're going back to the Bernabeu with with the win, I should say, not the 3 points, because now we're in a position where we can eliminate Manchester City. And that should galvanize the team. So obviously, Liverpool will be in our way. Barcelona, Bayern Munich. Those are the three sides. Arsenal, you should never sleep on Arsenal. These sides. But we can beat any of these other teams. Manchester City has been psychologically the team that's been in our way over the last few seasons. Just getting a win over them, eliminating them, getting them out of there, getting a win just at the Etihad today. The morale in the team has to be high. And Brahim Diaz today, like Brahim Diaz has not been in the best of form as of late, but obviously comes in and makes an impact. He has not been in the best of form, but what we saw from Brahim Diaz coming off the bench, having those limited minutes and limited touches and having that impact, we should all celebrate that, because Rodrigo started, and rightly so, because Rodrigo was, he played really well. I don't know if you guys agree with me, but Rodrigo was, every touch Rodrigo had on the ball, it was positive. It was towards the goal, very attack-minded from Rodrigo. Having a guy like that on your team, it just creates so many issues for the opposition. Think about how lucky we are to have Rodrigo, because Manchester City are dying to sign Rodrigo. So let's hope he stays at Real Madrid for a very long time. Like I said in the preview video, even if Real Madrid is behind, and I said this, and I had that feeling that I talked about how Brentford, how PSG, all these other sides, even when Manchester City is beating you and they're ahead, to stay calm, don't panic, and you'll have your opportunities. And that's where I felt like Real Madrid, even when we conceded early, I did not panic. I thought to myself, look, this side is going to score goals, especially earlier in games. They start the games off, even this season, really well, but towards the end of the game is where they start to have more issues. And then I talked about how poor they are in terms of ball progression in my preview video. And then you guys saw that, like, their ball progression out of the back was really poor. So many of those, the goals we got in the end was really due to a lot of their bad buildup from the back, which is that's Pep Guardiola's bread and butter, is build up from the back, to have a structure and system in place. But Carlo Ancelotti decided at halftime, hey, let's try to go for it. Let's try to press these guys higher. Let's put Jude higher up the pitch. Let's put Vinicius out on the wing, and let's be more aggressive. And it paid off, because this is a side that you cannot draw to. This is a side that you needed to beat. So let's celebrate this win. This is a big victory for Real Madrid, because us eliminating Manchester City, end of the day, it is Manchester City. You going to their ground and beating them, and then hopefully we get the job done next week at the Bernabeu. And then we have to look at either Atletico Madrid or Bayer Leverkusen. If we play Atletico Madrid the way we played the second half against Atletico Madrid over the weekend, if we play them the way we played in that second half, we can beat either one of those sides. So let's put all those bad results from earlier this season behind us, because now we're in a position where we can take advantage of the rest of the season, because if we can keep these players healthy, then we can do a lot of damage. And hopefully Rudiger will be back for the return leg. And the last thing really I want to talk about is also, what's his name? There was a lot of players who were going to get suspended if they got yellow cards. So thankfully, nobody got a yellow card, so there's no suspensions. All of the players are there's no suspensions for the return leg. So thankfully, there's nobody out that got a yellow card. So I know there was a couple of players, had they gotten a yellow, they would have been out. Fede, Furlan, Jude, I think, Mbappe, if I'm not mistaken. Ceballos is only 28. Yeah, Ceballos, I think, has earned his place as a squad player at Real Madrid. But in terms of long term, there definitely needs to be a long term strategy for who will be the long term successor to Toni Kroos. And one of the guys who's actually super underrated, who can play that role as a six, who can play as a guy who has the long range passing, who can initiate the build up play, is a guy who we made contact with, Joshua Kimmich. Joshua Kimmich is a truly elite. Joshua Kimmich is truly a elite ball progressor. So if you are trying to get, what's his name, Trent Alexander-Arnold or Joshua Kimmich can play a right back, and he can play as a 6 or as an 8. And to me personally, I love Joshua Kimmich, as not only because of his ability on the ball, but also his mentality. I love those kind of players and their mentality. But yeah, so unless there's anything else, I might just wrap it here. Hala Madrid. All the haters and everybody praying for Real Madrid's demise, sorry, it's just not happening today. Maybe next time, okay? Ferland Mendy, let me just quickly, I saw a couple of people ask me about Ferland Mendy. Look, Ferland Mendy has a specific role on this team, right? Like, he's the guy who provides more balance. He's not asked to provide more offensive threat. Ferland Mendy's job is to provide more defensive solidity, to sit back. He has very specific instructions, and to be honest, he fulfills those duties. Like, he does his job. Ferland Mendy is a very solid defensively, very difficult player to get past, physically very strong. But he's not the guy who's going to push up the high up the line and create opportunities for you. But I thought Ferland Mendy overall played pretty well today. He wasn't the reason why we conceded that penalty. I thought he did really well against Phil Foden. So many times Phil Foden got the ball, Ferland Mendy was there pressuring him and not allowing him that space and time to pick a pass out. So yes, I agree. Real Madrid badly need Dani Carvajal. But I don't know what Dani Carvajal is going to look like when he comes back, because obviously he's 32 years old. He was coming off a long season, and then he comes off of Euros, and then immediately back to another season. and he tore 3 parts of his knee, not just his ACL, but his LCL, his LCL, ACL, and I can't remember what the third one was, but I covered it in a video which you can watch. But yeah, stay humble, eh? But yes, we do want Alexander Arnold. But to me, if you gave me the choice between Alexander Arnold or Kimmich, I would actually go with Kimmich. Uh, that's just my personal opinion. You guys might disagree with me. That's not to say Alexander Arnold is not an elite right back, but to me, Joshua Kimmich can play those different roles. He can play as a 6, as an 8, which we actually really need. To me, I would actually get both. But the only thing with Alexander Arnold is I worry about him getting cooked day in, day out, because having a guy like that being a defensive liability when you don't have a proper structure and you have teams in and behind your right back, that is a huge issue. Raul Asensio, what a magnificent performance by him. Again, a few times where he lost the ball, he could, lack of experience. Let's not forget, think about what an incredible journey it's been for Raul Asensio. Only a few months ago, this guy was playing at the Castilla. Now the guy's playing away at the Ittihad as, a key player for Real Madrid, about to sign a contract extension. His salary is going to more than double. I mean, 4 or 5x his salary. Where only a few months ago the guy was playing at the Castilla. What an incredible story. Um, Hakimi was never a real opportunity for us. Hakimi was we cannot pay the same money that these oil nations can pay. So Real Madrid does not engage in those types of situations. But yeah, I wish Hakimi obviously comes from the academy. I would have loved to have Hakimi at Real Madrid, because obviously you guys know Raul Asensio is Moroccan originally, and obviously Hakimi is Moroccan, Brahim Diaz is Moroccan, which is quite interesting that you have all these elite Moroccan players out there, which is quite incredible. The nation of Morocco is creating some talent, quite incredible. But yeah, that's all I got for this one. I'm just so glad we got this win. Important towards the end of the game, it looked like we are going to lose, but you can never count Real Madrid out. And Dima Maghreb, I'll just say that I'm really happy, because before the game, I talked about the need for Real Madrid to stay in this game, even if they're not in front. So that's all I got for this one. Thank you all for watching, and Hala Madrid.